Okay, so in the last lesson I showed you some of the basics about if statements and how to use the logical AND operator, which is two ampersands. Now in this lesson I'm going to show you some of the more subtle details about the way if statements and certain logical operators work. So first of all, let's start by setting a variable, height equal to 5, and start with a very simple if statement. If height equals 5, then we'll go ahead and the value is 5. Okay, so let's start here and let's run this program as the starting point. And of course the result is the value is 5. Now what I've explained to you so far is that what is evaluated inside of the parentheses of the if statement is going to be either 0 or non-zero. 0 is false and the if statement will not execute. Non-zero is true and the if statement will execute. Now I explained to you that the double equal sign basically means is equal to, and it has something on the left and something on the right, and it's comparing the two to see if they are equal. Now what I want you to understand is a little bit more about how that double equal sign operator works. So if the two values are equal, the double equal sign will result in a 1, an integer 1. If they are not equal, then the double equal sign will result in the integer 0. So in this case, this entire expression is going to evaluate as simply 1, the integer 1, because height is in fact equal to 5. Now if we had written height is equal to 3, then this entire expression would have evaluated to 0. Now let's suppose we create an integer variable here. We'll call it holding variable. We'll start with a value of 0, and now we're going to assign it the value of height is equal to 5. Now we're going to printf what that value is. First of all, what do you think the output will be? Holding variable is going to be assigned an integer value of this, and since height is equal to 5, that's going to be a 1. So holding variable is now going to contain 1, like you'll see. And as you see, the holding variable contains 1. Now, when we talked about the double ampersand, which is the AND operator, or to be more specific, the logical AND operator, this operator also will result in either a 1 or a 0, just like the double equal sign. And here's how it works. Any non-zero 0 value, logical AND with any other non-zero value, the result is going to be 1. Anything else, it will be 0, like you see. So the only way that you can get a 1 when using the logical AND operator is that both sides have to be non-zero. They have to be evaluated as non-zero. Now also, like the double equal sign, the logical AND operator returns an integer. So it's either going to return a 1 or a 0, but it will be an integer. So we can set our holding variable to contain a value that is constructed using the logical AND operator. We can do this. Holding variable equals, and let's go ahead and say for logical AND 3. Okay, so what is holding variable going to be set to now? Well, 4 is non-zero, 3 is non-zero, so 4 logical AND 3 should result in a 1. And as we run the program here, you will see that it does. The holding variable contains 1. Now let's go ahead and look at something a little bit more complex. What if we write this? If height equal 3, where we're not saying is equal to, we're assigning height the value of 3, and we have a printf statement. We'll go ahead and delete the printf statement down here. Now what happens when we run this code? Why does it execute? The reason this printf executes is because height equals 3 will do two things. First of all, it will assign height the value of 3, and second of all, it will itself evaluate as the value being assigned. So it will be seen like this. This is the same thing. And since 3 is not 0, the printf statement will run, like you will see. And you see the printf statement executes because 3 is not 0. Now, if we were to set height equal to 0 and try to run it, then of course it's going to evaluate as 0, and the printf statement will not execute, as you see. Now what happens if we do this? Let's set height equal to 3, and then we're going to put the logical AND operator, and we're going to say height is equal to 5. Now take a look at this. What we're saying here with this expression is that we're going to be doing two things. We're going to be setting height equal to 3, and we're going to test if height is equal to 5. Or at least that's how it appears. But actually that's not what's going to happen. I'll show you that in a second, but first let me go ahead and change my printf statement. The value of height is height. Okay, so take about a minute, maybe pause the video, look at this line of code, and try to predict the output. Okay, so you probably imagined that the output would say, well, you might even assume that it would just skip over the whole if statement, but if you assumed that this printf statement would run, you are correct. And if you assumed that it would say the value of height is 3, you are incorrect. Here's the output. Take a look. The value of height is 1. So first of all, what you need to understand is that this entire expression inside of the parentheses of the if statement, when it consists of more than one thing, it can be done in more than one order. So for example, we could do this in one of two ways. We could say that we want to say height equals 3, which we're assigning the value of height 3, and then after that we can check to see if height is equal to 5, and then after that we can logically AND the two results together. But another thing we can do is we can simply set height equal to this, which itself will evaluate. Height is equal to 5 will evaluate to the integer 1, and 3, logical AND 1, being that they are both non-zero values, will evaluate to 1. And lastly, two things are happening. Height is being set to 1, and this itself is evaluating to 1, which is true because it's non-zero, causing this to execute. So if we want to get the result that we were looking for, what we need to do is we need to put parentheses around each expression to specify that we want each expression to execute in a certain way. Now what it's going to do is it's going to treat this as its own expression, which will be evaluated before the logical AND operator and then this after. So here what we're doing is we're setting height equal to 3, which will of course evaluate to 3. And now, after having done that, we're checking to see if height is equal to 5. This is going to evaluate to 0, and 3, logical AND 0, is going to result in 0, because they both have to be non-zero values for it to evaluate to 1. So as you see when I run this code, the result will be that the printf statement does not execute, as you see. So here is what I want you to remember. Anytime you have any expression like this, and there can be any ambiguity regarding in what order the expression should be evaluated, you should always use parentheses, because that will help make sure that you do not get unexpected results. Anyone who is reading your code will understand it better, and you won't have problems in some rare cases where one compiler might treat it different than another. So it is correct to place each of these expressions in parentheses, and it would be incorrect to leave out the parentheses, because as you just saw, we can get a totally different result than what we want. It's also important for you to understand that every single expression evaluates to something. Height equals 3 evaluates to 3. Height is equal to 5 evaluates to 1, because it is equal, well, it would evaluate to 1 except for the fact we just set it to 3. So in this case, of course, height is equal to 5 is going to evaluate to 0. And then, of course, 3 logical and 0 is going to evaluate to 0. Let's just change this just for a second. Let's suppose we set height equals to 5. Okay, so here, when this evaluates, first, height equals 5. That's going to evaluate to 5 and also ensure that height is set to 5. And then here, height is equal to 5 is going to evaluate to 1. And now 5, logical and 1, is going to evaluate to 1. And so the result will be that the printf statement will execute, like you will see. And there you go. So I encourage you to practice with this and get a feel for exactly how these operators work. Now let's go ahead and create another holding variable here. And let's assign it the value of everything we just did in these parentheses. And let's print the value of that holding variable, just so you can see how this works. Value is, and we'll put the holding variable here. There we go. And now when we run this program, oops, that should be holding variable, not holding value. And then if I run it, and there you go, you see the value is 1. So here you see that the reason holding variable is being set to 1 is because, first of all, height equals 5 is being evaluated, set to 5. Then height is equal to 5 is being evaluated, which is 1. And finally, 5 logical and 1 is going to result in 1 because they're both non-zero, which is why it says the value is 1. So again, I encourage you to experiment with this so that you can get a good feel for how if statements work, how the equality operator, which is double equal sign, works, and how the logical and operator, which is double ampersand, works. Okay, so that concludes this lesson.